let's get into this. So, Jacob, since um, this was your idea, MCU
Yeah.
top 10, I'm going to go ahead and start with you. Do your two honorable mentions that is outside the top 10 and explain why,
Okay.
of course.
Okay. So the two movies that just missed my top 10 are Black Panther 1 and Thor Ragnarok.
Hmm.
So let's start with Ragnarok. When this movie first came out, and the first couple times I saw it, it was I want to remember like top five. That's how high it was. Just because it was something new for Thor. Before with the first Thor in Dark World, he was so serious and everything, and it was more of a darker tone. So the lighter tone was a breath of fresh air. But for me, at least for me, I don't know about you, it hasn't aged as well. I think part of it is because of Thor: Love and Thunder
Yep.
is for me bottom tier MCU.
Yeah.
So Ragnarok kind of has the same tone. It's not the silliest Love and Thunder, but it kind of has the same tone. So it hasn't aged as well for me. So Ragnarok was in my top 10 for a long time, and now it's just out of the top 10. I do still enjoy it though.
Yeah.
It's not as bad as Thor: Love and Thunder. There's a lot of MCU movies worse than Thor Ragnarok. And then Black Panther. Um, so I really enjoy Black Panther, but as a character, he's never been one that's like been one of my favorites as far compared to these other characters and franchises we'll get to into my top 10. But Black Panther's still really good. I do enjoy it more than Wakanda Forever. Part of it being Chadwick Boseman, he's a great Black Panther. So
And
yeah,
today
those
would
two.
be his 49th birthday, I think, today.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah. That's crazy actually that
yeah.
we're recording on. I just mentioned that. So yeah, Black Panther and Thor Ragnarok are the two that just missed my top 10. Still good movies though.
Yes, very good movies. And for me, I got Ragnarok as well. Ragnarok, of course, when it first came out, it was so different for Thor because, like you said, Thor was so serious and so moody all the time. And I think with those first two Thor movies, they tried really hard to make everything so serious. And so when they brought Taika Waititi as the director into that whole
Hmm.
thing, it and now that we know Taika's style of movies now as the years have gone on, and we just know that he's just a silly director. He likes making silly things. Um, but for some reason, with this Ragnarok movie, he mixed everything so well, and I don't know how
Hmm.
he wasn't able to do that for Love and Thunder. But it's a colorful movie. It's a funny movie. It's got really good banter between Hulk and Thor. It's got all, and the addition of Valkyrie and of course Loki's in it. Just a lot of good character work and good comedy and good action scenes, of course. And so same for me. It was in my top 10 not too long ago, but it's kind of dipped down, especially after Love and
Hmm.
Thunder and the whole news that Taika didn't really want to do it, but he needed to do it because of this whole thing of him needing money for his kids, which is like it's fair. I get it. You gotta
Yeah,
have money
yeah.
for your children. It's a fair thing, but just the
Hmm.
the the reasoning of him like not really caring, but just doing it for the sake of doing it, just kind of takes me out of it. And then the next honorable mention, it's not Black Panther. It's Guardians Volume 2. It's just outside my
Oh,
top
okay.
10. Um, Now, I'm pretty sure this is going to be in your top 10 because you love the Guardians, and how can
Yeah,
you
I do.
not, right?
We'll see. We'll see.
Yeah, we'll see as we get into it.
I
Uh,
know a handful that are in yours. That's it. So yeah,
yeah.
we'll see how well we know each other with these.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, Volume 2, just it's been hated on for such a long time. I feel like because it's like the middle child of the trilogy, and
Hmm.
and it makes sense. It's the second movie, so it technically is the middle child. But like, it's still got heart. It's still got comedy. It's still got good characters. And James Gunn, turning these ragtag, just this group of misfits into some and people that we love, and does such a good job with that film. I'm pretty sure we'll talk about it more as we get into the top 10, but it's just outside top 10 for me. Um, but
Yeah.
yeah, so those are our honorable mentions. Now let's get started with number 10. Jacob, take us away with number 10.
So my number 10 is Spider-Man: Homecoming.
Oh, wow.
This one, yeah, this
Okay.
one's moved up into my top 10. after, I've had the MCU ranking for a while now, but looking over it for this video, I was like, you know what? It's just gonna make my top 10. A part of what I really love about this movie, aside from what everyone says, Michael Keaton is a great villain as Vulture.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it does a really good job at finally showing like Peter Parker finally feels like a high schooler. I love the Tobey Maguire movies,
Mm-hmm.
but he's like a 30-year-old playing a high schooler.
Yeah.
And the
Yeah.
same with Andrew Garfield, he
Mm-hmm.
was not high school age. And Tom Holland, he was in his early 20s, I believe, when Homecoming started.
Yeah.
But still, he has that high school look. And I think Homecoming arguably does the best job at having the high school feel with Spider-Man, which is a big part of his character, with Peter Parker. So I really love that, and the I don't know I know people are kind of mixed on Iron Man being so involved in the movie. That I know you've heard one part of Tom Holland's trilogy criticism is
Yeah.
him kind of being overshadowed by other characters. But I really like how Tony Stark is his mentor
Yeah.
in Homecoming before he eventually passes in game. But
Spoiler.
yeah, I really enjoy Homecoming. It's not my favorite of a trilogy, but yeah, I really enjoy it.
Yeah, that is a good film. Michael Keaton is just incredible as the villain. That
Mhm.
one scene in particular of Homecoming that I really really like. It's probably one of my favorite scenes in the entire MCU is when he's in the car with Peter, and he's slowly like you can see him slowly figure out that Peter is Spider Man, and just like all
Mhm.
the symbolisms that you see, like especially when they're at that red light, and you can see the red light just on his face, and then as soon
Yeah,
as he figures out that he's Spider Man, the green light comes on. Like, oh,
yeah.
I just figured it out. And that is just incredible. That was perfect. That's probably one of the best. Like that scene right there probably could put in the top 10 for me. It's not in my top 10, but Homecoming is a good Spider-Man film. And so I
Mhm.
can see why it's in your top 10. It's very good. Um,
Yeah.
Number 10 for me is the original Avengers. It has aged very
Okay.
well. Um, and it's the last film where we have seen Bruce Banner actually act like Bruce Banner. Like it like dives deep into Bruce Banner, and just that's like the last time you could take Hulk serious. I feel like was the first Avengers.
Yeah.
Maybe you can you can put that Age of Ultron maybe, but I think Age of Ultron was kind of like the down period is when he started going downhill a little bit,
Mhm.
especially with that forced Black Widow storyline. But this is the one movie where you could take him very seriously as a threat, and I
Yeah.
feel like this was the first time that we saw the entire superheroes as one, and the tension that was building between them was played excellently. Loki was a great villain in that film.
Mhm.
The whole Chitauri scene that took off like maybe 30-40 minutes of the back half of that film, fantastic. And I think Josh Whedon, he's not really a great director anymore, but for this movie, I think he did a good job with Bruce, and I think he did a
Yeah.
good job with the Avengers team as a whole. And I think it's aged very well, in my opinion. Um,
Mhm.
and that's
Well, it's
why
got
it's
a
barely in top 10 for me.
one thing that I always remember about the movie is Loki being a great villain,
Hmm.
and then also too, just when I think of that movie, I think of that iconic shot, the rotating camera
Mm,
when they're all in a circle together. That
yep.
was like the first legit team up in the MCU, which is that movie's. I know people, you have Infinity War and Endgame, so people kind of look past Age of Ultron and the original Avengers.
Hmm.
But yeah, I agree. The original Avengers is a great movie.
Yeah, that rotating shot was like just goosebumps down my
Hmm.
spine. It was
That's one of the
incredible.
most iconic shots in the
Mm,
MCU.
yeah, and it's really what kicked off the whole thing. Like if
Yep.
that movie didn't make profit, I don't think I think Marvel was going through some like bankruptcy stuff at that point. So like for that movie to take off the way it did, I think it saved the MCU in my opinion.
Hmm.
But
Yeah.
yeah, that's our number tens. Number nine, what you got?
So number 9, I have the original Iron Man, what started the MCU. So yeah, I watched this movie beginning of this year for the first time in a while, and I forgot how great it was. Like I always knew it was good, but rewatching it really made me realize how good it was. Tony Stark, he's a lot of people's all-time favorite character in the
Mm-hmm.
MCU.
Yep.
He's not my all-time favorite, but he's definitely up there. And yeah, just it's crazy to see how far the MCU has gone just from watching that first movie. Just how much things have changed and everything. But yeah, it's a great movie, and just it's cool to see. It's like an old school. It's an origin story, but how it's done is different. I don't know. It's yeah. Even now to me, when you watch it, it doesn't feel like generic superhero movie at all.
No.
I think what part of that is Robert Downey Jr. is one of the best castings ever as
Yes,
Tony Stark. Yeah, and it's what resurrected his career.
it did. That and Tropic Thunder. But
Yeah,
yeah, Tropic Thunder. Let's not even
a
get started with
little,
that.
little bit different roles, but
Yeah, just go two completely different roles. Um,
just a little bit. Yeah.
yeah, just yeah, a little bit. Yeah, Iron Man's number 9 for me too.
Okay.
Just the way, like you said, it didn't feel generic at all, but it was like the
Hmm.
first film in the MCU, and
Yep.
just seeing how movies have grown in general ever since that film, like take me back to that, and it felt simple. It felt simple but
Yeah.
effective. Um, Jeff Bridges was great as the villain. Um, we got introduced to Pepper. We got introduced to Happy. Um, Rhodey, even though it's a different Rhodey. Um,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
that would have been interesting to see if Terrence Howard would have stayed as Rhodey. Like, what would
Yeah.
it be now? You know,
Yeah.
um, and it's a solid just entry into the whole MCU as a whole, and it's a really good just solid entry for Iron Man. And
Hmm.
like you said, Robert Downey Jr. He's hilarious in that film. He's hilarious as Iron Man in every film that he's in. But in that film in particular, like you just got taken by his charm,
Hmm.
um, and it makes it a
Well,
great film.
it shows you how good the movie is when there's been so many superhero movies made now,
Hmm.
and you can still watch that movie and it doesn't feel generic. It feels fresh still.
Yeah,
So that shows you how good the movie is.
yeah, yeah. So that's our number 9. We have the same number 9, which is crazy to me.
Yeah.
Um, Number 8.
You want to start with your number eight this time?
Oh, sure, I'll go number 8.
I'm curious. Yeah.
Um,
Switch it up.
this might be a little low for you, but
Oh no.
my number 8 is Civil War.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
yeah, I mean it's a
It's not
fair.
that too much lower. Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, Civil War is number 8 for me. This was probably this was the introduction. We saw Spider-Man for the first time in this film. We got to see Black Panther for the first time in this film. We got to see what else did we get to see? Final. I think it was just those two: Spider-Man and Black Panther. The introductions of
Hmm.
them. Um, uh, and I felt like the whole tension between uh, Iron Man and Cap, Chris Evans and RDJ, was played well throughout the entire film, especially in that last scene when he finds out that Bucky killed his parents. That entire scene,
Yeah.
that was just heartbreaking at that point, because um, he's my friend, so was I. God, that line just does things to me to this day. And I
That's one of just that part of the movie. That's one of Robert Downey Jr.'s best performances at Tony Stark.
Yeah, like he wasn't fun.
Yeah.
He wasn't comical at all, and he was
Yeah.
serious. I feel like fully serious for the first time
Hmm.
in the MCU.
Yeah.
And I just think it's a great film in general. It's got great political talk. It really dives deep into what these superheroes do to civilians. Collateral damage, that sort of thing. And it's just a
Hmm.
really different perspective and a great insight. And I think the Russo brothers, they directed this film as well. They directed a lot of
Yeah.
good Marvel films, but this one in particular, just really good, and it's
I
written really well too.
yeah, and I believe this was talking about the Russo brothers. I was reading the other day because I just watched this movie yesterday. That apparently this was the movie Kevin Feige saw this movie, and this was the movie that got them to do Infinity War and Endgame because of how good this movie was.
Well, fair enough. I mean, I
Yeah.
don't blame him. It's a
Yeah.
good film.
Yeah. And so my number eight is Spider-Man Far From Home.
Wow.
This might be, yeah. I'm curious if it's in your top 10. This might be one of the most underrated MCU movies for me. I've
Okay.
never gotten the hate for this movie. Mysterio is a great villain with Jake Gyllenhaal,
Hmm.
and I've always liked the different setting of it being outside New York and it being in Europe.
Yeah.
I don't know. It just after you see Spider-Man in New York every freaking movie,
In
it
every one.
kinda, as
Yeah.
much as I love Spider-Man, I love pretty much all the movies. I don't know. It just felt different it being in Europe. I love the relationship between um, Peter Parker and MJ with Tom Holland and Zendaya. It's starting to build in that movie. I love that the building of their relationship. And yeah, just some of my favorite moments, like that moment when Mysterio is messing with Spider Man's head,
Yeah.
and he shows like Tony Stark's grave,
That was
and
very visually cool,
yeah,
really
and
visually
the
appealing.
you see Tony Stark come out of the grave and go
Hmm.
after him. Like there's moments like that. Some of my favorite moments in the whole entire MCU. So yeah, I've never gotten the hate for Far From Home. I don't know. It's always in the comedy too. The comedy's always been it's to me it's funnier than Homecoming, and I actually prefer it over Homecoming. So yeah, to me this is one of the most underrated movies in the MCU.
That's interesting. I never would expected you to put it in the top 10. That's really interesting. But it's a very good surprise. I do think it is a very underrated film. Uh-oh, we lost him. Hey, he's back. Okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
so yeah, like I said, it's a very interesting film. I do think I do like it. Okay.
Mhm.
And I do think it's very underrated. It's not in my top 10, but I do think
Very.
it's very underrated, and I do think it does get a lot of hate because I do think Jake Gyllenhaal is brilliant in this film.
Hmm.
And I do think, I think we get some of the best Peter moments in this, because he's got to save his friends, he's got to you know conceal his identity, and it's just so much weight, and he's dealing with Nick Fury. Well, Nick Fury, trying
Hmm.
to trying to work that as well, and just so much weight on him, and it's just a good depiction. And I do think Tom Holland is a great Peter Parker. There's no question.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, it's a really good film. I do agree with you. It's a good film, but just not top 10 for me. But
Okay.
the thing is, some MCU films are not going to make my top 10, but that does not mean I don't like them. There's
No.
a handful of MCU films that I thoroughly like. Not a lot of the recent ones. Okay, not a lot of recent ones, but a lot of them, during
Yeah, you're
Phase
gonna
Three.
find out with our list. You're gonna find out with our top 10. I mean, look, yeah, as far as well, one movie out of the last couple of phases was Marvel. Those are the only one. There's only one movie in my top 10
Yeah,
from the newer phases,
yeah,
and yeah, I'm sure it's the same for you. That we know.
maybe.
Yeah,
Um,
you have the Marvels. Yeah, right. No.
yeah, the Marvels. Yeah, definitely.
Coming in number one is the Marvels.
I think we lose all our
Um,
subscribers. Anyway, right.
so,
Number
what's your number
seven.
7?
My number seven is Shang-Chi. Number
Okay.
seven is Shang-Chi. Um, Now, I think it's also another one of those good origin stories. I think the fight choreography is insane in this movie. I do think Simu Liu is incredible, and I do think Tony Leung as the Mandarin is great. Aquafina, I know a lot of people don't like her, but I do think she was good in this, for what she was given. The whole,
Mhm.
friends into lovers trope. I'm so glad they didn't do this and do that in this film with her and Simu Liu. Um, his sister, I think this was the actress who played the sister. This was her first major role, like ever, and she was great. I think she did great. Um,
Mhm.
and the like I said, the fight scenes were great, and especially the very beginning scene with the dad and the mom was good. I just think it's a very visually stunning movie, especially when it depicts all the wind kicks and all that stuff. I just think it's great. And I know I had you watch it pretty soon.
Yeah.
I had you watch it. You weren't as big of a fan, but
Yeah, I did like it, but it's not in my top 10, but
mhm,
I did like it. It's tough. I felt like I enjoyed the first two acts more than the last act.
Yeah, the last act's a bit
I
rough. I
thought,
can agree with you on that, but
yeah, I thought the last act got a little bit jumbled
Mhm.
and messy. Overall, though, it's definitely one of the better movies of the last two recent phases. But I did like the movie, but yeah, I'm not as high on it as you. I know when you showed it to me because you saw it when it first came out, and I didn't watch it till earlier this year. You
yeah,
were talking about how it was like in your top 10 and everything, and so I wouldn't say I was disappointed, but I'm just not as high on it as you.
that's fair. I get it. And plus, my high expectations kind of like where you were like, oh, this is gonna be good, but didn't end
Hmm.
up being good for you. That's my fault. I'm sorry.
Well, I did like it. It's good.
Yeah.
It's just like I have to look at like my full MCU list, but it's around that like 13 to 17 range. It's right in the middle, which is with the amount of MCU movies, that's good. Like I
Mhm.
usually enjoy those movies if they're in the middle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're number 7.
So my number 7 is Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. This is another movie
Yup.
that I've never gotten the hate for. Never got the hate for. I think it's arguably the ending of the movie with Yondu is arguably the most emotional moment of the trilogy.
Mhm.
I love the banter between Rocket and Peter. I know like Sean Chandler. He's higher on it. He's higher on Volume 2 than he used to be, but he thought he went a little bit too far with them taking jabs at each other and the jokes and everything.
Yeah.
But I always thought it was hilarious. And I don't know. I see the criticism with Volume 2, how the start of it is kind of all over the place with them getting the batteries and everything. But yeah, I've always thought this movie was a blast, and it's there's still, even with the comedy, there's still serious moments like with Yondu, and there's a moment with Yondu and Rocket where Rocket's kind of opening up to him a little bit, and along with Yondu doing the same. But yeah, there's still one of my favorite moments in the trilogy too is when Peter is still down there fighting Ego, and Rocket's closing the ship. He's closing the ship door, and Drax, with all the comedy he has throughout the trilogy, Drax is like dead serious, yelling at him over and over again, "Where's Quill?" That's one of my favorite moments in the trilogy.
Yeah.
And yeah, it with all the comedy with Volume 2, it still has awesome emotional moments and serious moments.
Yeah. James Gunn made us, feel for a blue guy that was literally a piece of crap the entire first film. But
Yeah.
he was like that for a reason. That's what we learned in
Hmm.
the second film was because Peter's dad was a planet that wanted to eat everyone.
Yeah.
So and yeah, it's like I had said earlier, emotional film, funny as hell. Um, and it's although it's barely outside my top 10, I do think it's still a great film.
Yeah.
And if you want to hear my thoughts on it, go back to the beginning of the video. But yeah, so number 6. So you take this one, number 6.
Okay. So number 6, you've already talked about this one. Captain America: Civil War is my
Hmm.
number 6. This is the one that climbed the most. It was just outside of the top 10, or it may have been number 10, but it's moved up a little bit after on rewatch. Yeah, this is a God. This is a great movie. The combat, dude, the hand to hand combat
Hmm.
is nonstop in the movie, and it's shot really well. The opening with Bucky and like that whole fight going on was awesome. And then like you said, the feud between Captain America and Iron Man, one of the most iconic moments in the MCU is their fight with Bucky
Hmm.
joining in here and there. And yeah, the one of that was like the first time that Tony Stark was 100% serious. He's had like serious moments like all throughout the movie. He's taking jabs at Cap,
Yeah.
but they're like kind of jokey jabs.
Hmm.
And then what the heck?
See, this is what happens when we run a first episode on under the new brand and we don't test anything. This is what happens right here.
Yeah, so all throughout the movie, he's taking jabs at Captain America, but they were like throwing a joke in there, kind of thing, like just kind of making fun of him. And then when he finds out about his dad, that's when he's 100% serious, which is one of the best moments, along with that fight that they have. And yeah, that great movie. And then, like you said, it introduces the first time we see Tom Holland Spider Man, first time we see Chadwick Boseman in Black Panther. So two iconic characters in the MCU get introduced there, and yeah, it's a great movie, and it's what you can really feel the build up to what eventually is Infinity War and Endgame.
Yeah. Yeah, and like I said, it's just written very well. It's
Hmm.
just, especially for like a movie so political, and you know how politics. I mean, it's a fake movie. It's based off a comic. I get it, but
Hmm.
knowing how people are, it could get pretty intense. But I think it's written very well.
The movie could have very well been a drag, but
Yes.
it wasn't.
No, it was not.
I thought with the political side and then also with the action, I thought they balanced it really well
Hmm.
to not make it too slow of a pace and
Yeah.
drag. I thought they did a great job balancing it.
Yeah. Yeah. So my number six is Winter Soldier. Um,
Okay.
this is, I think, was one of the first like spy thrillers of the MCU.
Yeah.
Um, I think it was also directed by the Russos, wasn't it? I believe.
I
Um,
think so. Oh,
Man, the Russos, man, they make a lot of good Marvel movies. But when they're
yeah.
outside of Marvel, they're complete ass. They don't do anything good outside of Marvel. Um, yeah. So Winter Soldier, first spy thriller. It's the introduction of Bucky. Just the entire movie was just fast paced, intense. Um, and the fight scenes were great. I feel like every Captain America movie has good fight scenes,
Hmm.
especially the newer ones. Civil War and this one. Um, and you know, at the time, I didn't know that Bucky was the winner. I didn't know that was him. No one did. Unless you were a comic book reader or if you knew the
Yeah.
lore of the MCU or Marvel in general. And so, learning that Bucky was the Winter Soldier, that was just a huge plot twist and just kind of threw a wrench into everything. And just the relation, Cap trying to win his best friend back, just super super emotional. Um, and just his whole relationship with Natasha, and then it's the introduction of the Falcon. Sam was dope in this movie. He was the best wingman you can ever ask for. They come to his house and they're all just covered in soot because they went to that base that blew up, and they just look
Hmm.
super disheveled and distraught. And then Cap's like, "I need a place to stay," and Sam's like, "Yep, come right in, man. I mean, you're covered in all this. I don't care. Come on, man. You probably might be, wanted by the U.S. government. Who cares? Come on in." Just the best wingman ever. I really do like Sam. And I think he was the best option for Cap. After the original Cap.
Hmm.
I just thoroughly enjoyed it because I thought it was just very tense, and again it was more like a political thing, but I do think it was very good, and I think it was very written very well. But
Hmm.
that's my number six. All right, so for number five, I have Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 1.
Okay.
Um, I think this is probably this was the best introduction to anything like in the MCU. Period. The movie is hilarious. I quote this movie all the time.
Hmm.
Um, and we got this is the first time we got to see these characters. We get to see Star Lord for the first time, and then we get to see Drax, Rocket, Groot, Gamora, um, and so
Yondu.
and Yondu. And I
Yep.
just every single person in that movie had a spotlight and a shine, and
Hmm.
they knocked it out of the park. It's just a funny movie. It's charming, but it's also got that point of seriousness and I'm gonna probably butcher this word, camaraderie. I can't even say the word, but
Camaraderie.
yeah, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Um, and I just think it's so incredible. Like I can't put it into words how good it is. Um, but yeah, that's my number five. What's yours?
So my number five is Spider-Man: No Way Home.
Yes.
This we remember when we saw this movie opening night.
Yep.
That was one of the coolest theater experiences ever.
Mm-hmm.
Seeing Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire finally there with from like a year you heard about the leaks and everything, whether it was true or not. going into it, I was like 99% sure
Yeah.
that it was true that they were in it,
Yeah, because
but
if their
you never
villains
know.
were going to show up, if their villains were in the trailer,
Yeah,
like, why would they
yeah,
not?
yeah. So I was like, man, there's too many rumors. Like it has to be true, and it being true, which is one of the coolest experiences. And this
Hmm.
is a great movie. Like,
Yeah.
um, I've seen it a handful of times now. I will say, if I had to slightly nitpick, is I feel like once you've seen the movie a good amount of times, you're just waiting for when Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire get into the movie
Yeah.
because that's such a big moment. So you're just kind
Hmm.
of waiting for it. But it's not a knock on like the first half of the movie because the first half of the movie is great too, where you
Yeah.
know everybody's found out about his identity, so he's having to deal with that. And then we get a cameo from a Daredevil. Daredevil makes a cameo,
He does.
and yeah, this is just a great movie, and it's it finally, I think it's cool how like in Homecoming how Iron Man was his mentor, and then you had Nick Fury being his mentor and kind of looking over him here and there. But in this movie, he's completely on his own, and he actually, for the first time, really deals with trauma
Yeah.
and losing Aunt May, and just kind of like the world crumbling on top of him with everybody blaming him. J. Jonah Jameson being one of them,
Hmm.
talking about it's all his fault and everything. So
Yep.
this is a
Typical
it's the
Jay
first,
Jonah. You know.
yeah. And one of my favorite, it's one of my favorite posters also too, but one of my favorite moments in the movie is when he's sitting on top of the building in the rain and he's just looking up at the big screen in New York City
Yes.
of talking about what happened. One of my
Hmm.
favorite moments in the movie.
Yeah. That
Yeah,
was a cool.
this is a great movie, and so a lot of iconic moments. With all three of the Spider-Man working together.
Hmm.
Great villains like Willem Dafoe, along with him being awesome in the first Tobey Maguire movie. He's awesome in this too. Just steals the show of him. That another great part too is when he first, you think he's a good guy. You don't really think he's a good guy, but all the Peter Parker and everybody else thinks he's a good guy, and then of course he's not. He
Yeah.
finally reveals his evil side,
Hmm.
and so yeah, that's another great moment too, where he's Tom Holland is like just punching him over and over again, and he's just laughing like a maniac.
Yeah.
Another one of my favorite parts. Yeah, this great movie, and this and one more movie that's in my top five are easily the best of the newer MCU.
Hmm. Yeah. And I know exactly, like, a lot of people know what's going to be in the top five. Like, when
Yeah,
we talk about it, they know. Um,
yeah,
yeah. So to expand on that, I'll talk about it because it's my number four. No Way Home is
okay,
my number four. Um, I just, yeah, like, it's a fan service movie. Okay, we
for sure.
understand that, but
Mhm.
Peter Parker, our MCU Peter Parker was not overshadowed in any way. Like, this was his movie. Like, even when Toby and Andrew, came into the film, they didn't
Yep,
overshadow him at all. And that's what
yep,
this movie does so well.
mhm,
Like, Toby, has his moment with, the sword going through him and, sacrifice, like teaching, I guess, teaching our Peter a lesson and,
yeah,
like, don't let your anger get the best of you. And then Andrew
mhm,
having his, the MJ or the MJ Gwen Stacy catch moment,
yeah,
was perfect. Um, you know, and he was not overshadowed in any way. And that's what I
mhm,
like about this. And I truly do believe this movie cemented Tom Holland as Peter Parker. He was fantastic in this movie. Every single
mhm,
moment, where he's dealing with trauma
yeah,
when May's dying, like, he acted his ass off. He was great. And of
mhm,
course, Willem Dafoe. You can't say much more about him. He's just great in what he does. And every Green Goblin scene he was in, just outstanding. Doc Ock, great. I do have some nitpicks too with, like, Sandman. Electro was done good
yeah,
in this movie, but I do think Sandman,
yeah,
Lizard, and those two were kind of like a disservice because I felt like
mhm,
Lizard kind of looked a little weird and Sandman,
yeah.
um,
If I remember correctly, the uh, Lizard and Sandman, those are the two that I believe the
We're not
voice
on set.
actors or the people were not on set. Yeah,
Yeah.
and you can kind of tell at moments. So yeah, I do agree with that.
Like there was some shots at the end when they were getting cured that were
Hmm.
taken from other movies. So like
Yep.
when Sandman's cured, it's taken from Spider-Man 3. And then
Hmm.
when Lizard's getting cured, it's from Spider-Man 1 or whatever.
Yep.
The Amazing Spider-Man 1, whatever. Um,
Yeah.
but I mean, it really didn't take anything away from me.
No,
It didn't.
it's like if you watch the past movies enough, it's something you can tell. You can tell that they're reused shots, but it's not like egregiously bad where
Yeah.
it just completely takes you out of the movie. Yeah.
Hmm. So I mean, yeah, it's just and it's the perfect like I think that and this is the send off point for Peter Parker to break off from the MCU. He's no longer
Hmm.
Iron Man boy. Okay, he's his own.
Yep.
He MJ. He sacrificed
And
everything. He lost May. MJ and Ned don't remember who he is. Doctor Strange doesn't know who he is. Right? No one remembers
yeah,
who he is. And so I do think, and Venom's in that universe now. I do
yeah.
think the next Spider-Man movie that's going to be branching off as I hope to God I don't trust Sony at all. But
Well,
when
it's already been coming out that Spider-Man 4 is going to be it's going to tie in all the Sony verse with all
like
the villains and
all
everything.
the other spin-off stuff like that's just awful garbage. But I
Yeah.
with the Spider-Man stuff like with the main storyline I do think they'll do a little bit of service. Um,
Hmm.
but as for all the spin-off stuff, that's another story for another day. Um, Especially that Madam Web trailer that just looks garbage. But we're not here to talk about that. We're here to
I
talk
saw
about good movies.
I saw today the same writer as Morbius, the writers as Morbius are writing Madam Web.
It's webbing time.
Bring on the memes.
Yeah, bring on
Yeah.
the memes. But yeah, so No Way Home number 4 for me. What's your number 4?
So we haven't switched here. My number 4 is the first Guardians. So you had Guardians 1 at number 5, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So we just got them flipped. The first Guardians number 4, like you said, it's one of the best, probably the best introduction in the MCU, and it just felt at the time, it just felt so fresh with the comedy and everything and the characters. Rocket Raccoon, I'll be talking about him a little bit. Rocket Raccoon is my favorite MCU character,
Mm-hmm.
and the end of the trilogy cemented that.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just he's hilarious. Groot is great. I mean, all the characters are great, and James Gunn, he did it with the Suicide Squad also. Like he has like these outsider characters that I don't know. You feel for and you care about. I mean, it's a freaking in the movie you get introduced to a freaking CGI raccoon,
Yeah.
and by the end of the trilogy, he's like like I said, he's like one of your favorite MCU characters.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, the Guardians one is great. Ronan, not like an elite villain or anything, but he's not a bad villain at all.
Mm-hmm.
I've always thought he was a good villain, and
He's
it's
and he's taken
it's
very
just what
seriously in this. It's not a villain where
yeah,
you're like, this guy's gonna lose. We don't. What
yeah.
what is this villain? But no,
Hmm.
he was a good villain. Yeah,
Hmm. And is this the? I might be mistaken, like a post-credit scene or something. Is this the first time we see Thanos on screen?
I believe so. No, or
Yeah,
is it after the Avengers? I believe.
it might have been. Yeah,
I think Guardians
I
one
can't
is when
remember.
he puts on the glove, and I think the first Avengers is the post credit that we see of him. I believe
Okay,
because
yeah.
remember Loki is doing
Uh-huh.
Thanos' bidding
Well,
in that movie.
I know for sure. I know for sure that the first Guardians, which is another really cool moment. The first Guardians, when you first get introduced to the Infinity Stones,
Hmm. Yes.
actually seeing them and everything, and going through their backstory and all that. That was one of my favorite scenes in the movie.
Yeah.
But yeah, has comedy, but also has serious moments, just like in Volume Two, which is what I love about the trilogy.
Yeah. A great film. And yeah, so that number 4, number 5 swap. I mean, both those movies are great, so they could be put
Yep.
in either position.
All
Number
right,
3,
top three.
I think the top 3 is going to be pretty similar. I think um, number
Yeah.
3 for me is Endgame.
Hmm. I
Um,
was going to say that that's also my number three.
okay, cool. So we can both talk about it.
Yep.
Yeah. So Endgame. Now I know a lot of people don't like the time travel stuff. Um,
Hmm.
which I get it because there's a lot of time travel movies out there, but I do think it's done well, and a lot of the stuff that
Yeah.
happens within the time traveling aspect of it, it makes sense. Especially when they're talking about, oh, okay, so, and this is what I like about the MCU at this point, up to this point, up to Phase 3, was the fact that they connected everything. Like, when they're talking about, the stones are here at a specific point in time, and three of the stones were in New York or whatever. I'm like, wow, they're right.
Hmm.
There's three stones in New York, and the way that they built all that up uh, over years of
Yeah.
MCU films, like
Like,
that's impossible,
and we,
but
we
they
can
did it.
we'll talk about it too we'll eventually get to it too, having like discussions about the MCU at the moment and everything.
Yeah.
But there was like all this build up from Endgame. There was like a through line where you can watch the movies individually and not be completely lost.
Hmm.
But there was also a through line where, I mean, even like, the first half of the movie when they're trying to get everybody back from the snap, they're like going through past movies. It's
Yeah.
almost like a greatest hits type of thing, like a celebration type of thing,
Yeah.
where you're going through all the past movies. They go through the first Avengers, and they go through the first Guardians. Like, it's cool how they tie everything in and they make it cohesive.
Hmm.
The three phases.
And it's great, and it's got great callbacks,
Hmm.
and it makes it a little bit different, with each callback. Like they add something into that, so it's not just like, oh, they're going to this place to get a stone. They grab the stone and they go, and oh, that's all we're gonna do is just grab the stone.
Yeah.
But they add some stuff into it, like Cap saying
Hmm.
"Hail Hydra" in the elevator. That was cool. Like
Yeah.
the fact that
Well,
he
even like
knew.
while Tony's trying to get one of the stones, he runs into his dad,
Yeah,
and his
like
dad
that
doesn't know
was
that
great.
it's him.
That was a great
But
moment.
he finally gets a moment with his dad, which makes the moment and Civil War even more meaningful.
Hmm.
Him finding out about his dad and everything, and how he died. So him getting to see his dad one last time, even though his dad doesn't know that it's his son.
Hmm.
That's right there, which is another
Yeah,
funny moment where he gives him a hug and he's like thank you for everything, and then he pauses. He's like, you've done for this country.
yeah, that was pretty good.
Then you see where Jarvis.
Yeah, was the
Yeah.
butler.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
just
So like cool moments like that. It's
it's
like
great.
homages, but also like a celebration of all the movies building up to Endgame, and then it was just a whole event, like the battle.
The final battle was
Mhm.
cool. It was
Yeah,
so
and
cool.
one of my favorite Thanos lines is when he's like beating down on Thor. Was it Thor, Captain America,
And Iron
and
Man,
yeah, and Iron Man. He's just beating down on him, and he says like what I'm gonna do to your annoying little planet. I'm
I'm
gonna
gonna
enjoy
enjoy
and
it.
everything. Just like,
Hmm.
yeah,
Yeah,
just some of his, man, iconic.
yeah.
So like that final battle is awesome.
You could not live with your own failure.
Yeah,
Where did
yeah,
that
just
bring you? Back
back
to
to me.
me. Like,
Yeah.
oh, so good.
Yeah, like you can nitpick the time travel stuff and it like plot holes and everything, but I mean, man, for how much they had to balance and how much they had to live up to, the fact that they lived up to it, and they by the end of it with the story with how Tony had his character arc and dying and everything, and
Yeah,
then Cap getting his moment. Um, they yeah they did it. They didn't fumble it at the very end after all that build up.
yeah. And it was a full 10-year buildup too, and that
Hmm.
just was the end all be all, you know.
Yeah.
And so it was like we both said, you could nitpick the time travel stuff, but just overall, it was just it was so good, and having all those movies lead up to one point, you can't ask for better. You can't. And
Mhm.
the Russos again, man, they did it.
Maybe 5 years somebody can talk him back into doing
Yeah,
some more MCU movies.
come do Kang Dynasty. Come on.
Yeah. Yeah.
Number two, I think we have the same number two. Volume 3. Is that yours?
Yeah. We're
Yeah.
about to have the same top three.
Yeah.
Yeah, Guardians 3.
Um, what can we say about this?
Another
I
movie
don't.
we both saw it. Another movie we went to the theater together and saw.
Yeah, I don't think I've cried more over a raccoon before in my life. I
No, I've
don't
never
think I've
cried over
cried so
Raccoon until that
much
movie.
in a movie.
Yeah.
I've cried like maybe like I would have to have three hands to count how many times I cried. in that
Hmm.
movie. Like like my jacket was wet. I was just I was like constantly wiping my eyes. I was a mess. And this was the movie that solidified Rocket and like how much James Gunn has made us care about that damn raccoon.
Hmm.
And it was again, it was like there was whiplash, sure, when you're going to funny serious, but that's just, like I feel like James Gunn was like, okay, we're sorry, I'm sorry for making you watch a raccoon get abused, but here's a funny
Hmm.
moment for you. And I don't, it didn't bother me. It was a nice counterbalance of comedy and seriousness, and I do think the High Evolutionary was a very, very good villain. I wanted him to die the entire movie, so that's a good villain right there. Um,
Yeah, he's. I got to really think about it, but I think since Thanos, he's probably the best villain
oh,
in the
for sure,
MCU since Thanos. Yeah.
for sure. And it's just in the introduction of Adam Warlock. I know a lot of people didn't like Warlock in this because he acted
Hmm.
kind of dumb, but that's the point. He was released from his pod too early. He's a baby
Yeah.
in essence. He's a baby with superpowers, and so
Hmm.
I think Warlock, and I think he was treated right. Um,
Yeah.
and he had some good moments, and so I do think, as he's with the new Guardians now with Rocket, and I that entire ending scene with Florence and the Machine in the back and
Yeah.
Drax
Everybody has
finally
it.
being able to dance, like every time I see that scene, I cry every time.
Mhm.
And I don't know what it is, but I just it
Well,
I think it's the fact that it's the last time we're going to see James Gunn directing a Guardians film, or
yeah.
the fact that it's just like it's such a feel good moment for everybody. And
Uh,
that's just the perfect punctuation of that Guardians trilogy, and it is probably the best trilogy. It is the best trilogy of
yeah,
the
it's
entire
it's my
MCU.
favorite trilogy in the MCU.
Hmm.
Um, and what makes that ending so good about them dancing and everything? Because most of the time, when it's like the final movie of a trilogy or a franchise, you want to have high stakes. So when no big character dies, you kind of feel like the stakes weren't high enough.
Hmm.
What made it so good was that none of the main characters died, but you didn't feel like, I don't know, you didn't feel like it was a cop out. You felt satisfied by the end, even though no one went out in some heroic death. Like it, the way James Gunn did it was perfect.
Hmm. Yeah,
Yeah,
and a lot of people coming into that movie expected somebody to die, and the
yeah.
fact that
I
no
mean,
one died.
everybody was talking. Everybody was like, "Who's gonna die?" There was videos of ranking who was most likely to die.
You're calling me out right now. I made a video,
Oh yeah, you did.
a
Yeah. Well, I was
predictions
talking about other
video.
videos because there
Oh,
are other videos.
I made a
Yeah.
predictions video. If you guys go and look at the catalog when I was the camster, I made a predictions video, and this is
Who was your
my
number one for most likely to die?
I don't remember. I think it was
Was it Rocket?
Drax or Rocket. I'm not
Yeah.
sure. But please don't go look. It's aged like milk. Okay, don't go look back at it. But I did make one of those videos, and you can go check in the catalog if you want to see how wrong I was. But yeah, the fact that no one died um, was a good. It was good. And
Yeah.
it was just, it was so good, and I could watch that movie every day for the rest of my life, and I would never get
Mhm.
tired of it. It's just that good.
Well,
Um,
I have a I got it on a DVD
Me
and I
too.
watched it not long ago.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I have pretty much every MCU film on DVD. So,
Mhm.
um, but for number one, Infinity War, I think it's
Yep.
clear. Um, Infinity War, I think is the best movie in the MCU. I
Yep.
just think because of the sheer gratitude of it, we see Thanos as the villain for the first time, and I think Thanos, played by Josh Brolin, um, he was he's so like calm and like calculated the entire movie, and he just
Well,
talks so calm.
that's what makes him such a good villain is he's like beating the crap out of everyone
Yeah,
and he's like so calm about it.
yeah,
Like some of the insane stuff he does and he's just so calm about it.
yeah. Like
He's just
Gamora
like,
stabs his projection, and he's like, "Oh, daughter," like
yeah.
he's like, "Oh, I'm so
Or like
sad."
when Wanda when Wanda destroys one of the stones by
Hmm.
killing Vision,
Hmm.
and he calls Wanda his daughter or child. He
Yeah,
says he says he says, "Oh, my child," or something like just evil stuff.
the hardest
Yeah,
decisions require the strongest wills.
yeah,
Like,
iconic lines.
shut up,
This
dude.
Infinity War was peak Thanos to me.
Yeah.
Thanos was awesome in Endgame, but you didn't get as much of him.
Hmm.
Like Infinity War, it's the whole movie of him slowly getting closer to getting his plan done,
Yeah.
and then just pretty much running out of time.
Yeah.
And yeah, this I watched that movie not too long ago. Like that's it's crazy because it's like 2.5 hours,
Hmm.
but
It
it's
doesn't
so
feel
good
like
that the
it.
2.5 hours fly by.
Yeah.
Yeah, they fly by.
And just like Endgame, it's got so many characters to balance, and it does a really good
Hmm.
job at balancing it.
Yep.
And we see Cap with a beard, we see Black Widow with blonde hair, um, and just the fact that bouncing back between all these groups of people and the way they converge, and like you have two separate battles. You have one on Titan, and you have one in Wakanda, and just the way it bounces it back, and then you have Thor on that planet making Stormbreaker or
Hmm.
whatever. Just the way it's structured
Hmm.
is the best in the MCU because
And
it's got the stakes high.
yeah, and I thought the group pairings were perfectly done too,
Hmm.
with having Thor be with the Guardians and then
Yeah.
eventually go Rocket.
Are you mocking
And they,
me?
they do it again in Endgame where Rocket is with Thor and they kind of bond over
Hmm.
their loss and stuff.
Hmm.
And
Are, are you mocking me? He's
yeah,
trying to copy me. That entire
as
spaceship
Guardians of the
scene.
Galaxy. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
fantastic.
And then I think I don't know, just because it's so different and so dark. One of my favorite moments in the MCU is just the ending of Infinity War.
Where he
Pretty
just, yeah,
much
he smiles.
it's rare. It's rarely you ever see it, but the villain won. He
Yeah,
sat down and he smiles, knowing that he he won. Like he accomplished his plan, and then it just cuts to black.
yeah.
Like I unfortunately I didn't see Infinity War in theaters,
Me neither. I didn't. I
uh,
wish I wish I would
but
have.
that's one movie I wish I would have saw in theaters because I've heard stories of like people coming out speechless because they've never seen the villain win in the end of the MCU movie, or people coming out crying thinking that they're never going to see Spider-Man again. Which even when I first saw it, I was like, they're bringing him back.
Yeah.
Like that's the whole point of Endgame is bringing him back from time travel and everything. But still, that ending is man, it's still even I rewatch. I've seen that movie tons of times, and even that ending still is like, man, this what a cool way to have it where Thanos wins.
Yeah, the whole thing with them just being completely distraught coming out of the theater and just like
Hmm.
dry tears on their cheek because they see all their favorites just getting snapped out of existence,
Hmm.
and just the sheer like presence of that film, like the magnitude that it is, because the
Hmm.
stakes are high, right? Because Thanos is going to wipe half the population, but
Hmm.
you also knew that there was going to be a second Avengers film coming out, so you're
Yeah,
like, how is this going to end, right? Like what's
yeah,
going on here, and then it ends like that. Like that's just the
and
coup de grace right there.
I loved how yeah Thanos was an evil villain and
Hmm.
he was the best villain in the MCU so far, but it wasn't like he was a bad guy just to be a bad guy. Like he had nuance to him. Like apparently just from getting the Soul Stone, he actually loved Gamora
Yeah, he did.
and um and it wasn't like he was bad. He was evil just to be evil. Like
Hmm.
they're running out of resources, so his plan was just cut out half the population. Which is like not that you get Thanos and you're like I agree, but it's not just he's just evil just to be evil.
Yeah,
Like he has a plan that you can kind of see where he's coming from. He's just it's not his decision to make.
yeah. He
Cutting out
had he
half
had
the population.
intention. He
Yeah,
was just
yeah,
he didn't want to kill everyone because he likes killing
right,
people.
right.
So yeah, I mean we could talk about that movie all day if we wanted to.
Hmm.
It's just so good. Um, but
We'll
yeah,
have
that
to do there'll be something to do like in the future, like a deep dive in the movie,
hmm
like breaking down moments and stuff. That'd be cool to do.
that would be cool, but not today.
Yeah,
Um,
we'll
we
be here
still,
for another hour.
yeah, at this rate. Um, but yeah, those are our top 10 MCU movies. You good with your top 10? I'm good with my top 10.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
All right. Well,
A little bit different, but I mean, we had the same top three,
yeah,
so,
we did.
which I figured. I knew you would have Guardians 3, Infinity War, Endgame real high, and then also No Way Home. So
Mhm.
I mean, it's a lot of people's the same
Yeah. Yeah.
movies in their
Yeah.
top
The,
of
the,
the
the 10 through 6 through 10 is where it kind of gets, that's where
yeah,
it all kind of mismatches
yeah,
around. But yeah, so like I said, those are our top 10 MCU films. If you enjoyed the discussion, or if you want to leave your top 10 MCU films in the comments, do that. Um, like and subscribe, as always. Jacob, would you like to remark anything to the people out there?
yeah. Yeah. Like and subscribe if you want, and also too, it should be under us on the video. Follow our socials, including Letterboxd.
Mm-hmm.
We usually log. Yeah, right here.
Yep. And follow our
We
Twitter,
usually
too.
yep, yep. Follow our
Our,
Twitter
our,
and
our
then
brand new Twitter.
yep, and then Letterbox. Follow our personal Letterbox where we usually try to log every movie that we see outside of the MCU and in the MCU.
I did review Napoleon, but I didn't like it. Okay, let's
Yeah,
put that out there. But I'm not gonna spoil too much. Okay, just read my little review. Okay, that's all I'm gonna say. But yeah, follow our socials, follow our main Twitter, and yeah, that's gonna do it for this video. We will see y'all in the next one. Peace.